So I'm gonna be honest with you and say that I just got back from a trip. My voice isn't 100, and I can't fully hear out of my ears because I'm really sensitive to pressure changes and my ears haven't fully popped after being on an airplane. But that's okay. We'll get through this episode and we'll make it short and sweet, and hopefully you will be able to catch up on other episodes that you've missed recently. Today I want to talk about emotional responsibility and releasing what isn't your responsibility when it comes to your emotions. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to a new episode of the Mini Amira Show. On this podcast, we talk about emotional wellness, spirituality, and so much more. I'm your host, Amira Sookram, and I'm the author of the Guilt-Free Goals book and upcoming book, Feelings-Based Living. I also like to send out monthly flow notes that have to do with seasonal and energetic vibrations. So get on my email list now if you want those in your inbox every month. So emotional responsibility is this idea that we have to take ownership over our thoughts, feelings, and actions. This is a similar idea to an episode I did earlier that talks all about how these three interact with each other. But instead of them just interacting with each other, we're adding this layer that we have to take ownership over these three things. We have to take ownership over the thoughts we're having. We have to take ownership over the actions we're taking. And we have to take ownership of how we feel. When we can own these three things, I like to say that this is when we actually become adults. When we're blaming other people or projecting or suppressing our emotions, thoughts, or actions, it's going to impact how we show up in the world. So when we are quote-unquote adults and we're still blaming our parents or blaming our friends or blaming our peers for the circumstances in our life, we are not practicing emotional responsibility. We have to actually step into a role where we're seeing ourselves as active participants in our lives. And know that we have control over certain things and actually take action over what we do have control of. So that's a big part of emotional responsibility. The other part of it is recognizing when something is not our responsibility. So somebody comes up to you and they ask you for a favor. They ask you to maybe pick them up from the airport. And you in your brain are like, I don't want to drive to the airport. I don't want to pick this person up. I'm going to have to sit in traffic. It's at rush hour. Like, it's going to be horrible for me. But this person is asking me to do this. In that moment, you have the responsibility to make a decision for your life. If you know that emotionally this is just going to be way too much for you and you're probably going to resent this person for asking you, you can make a choice for your life and be responsible for that choice. Your frustration is not on the other person. It's on you. It's your responsibility to deal with the emotions that come up, even if they're coming up as a result of your interactions with other people. Every time we step into an interaction with somebody, we are playing an active role in that interaction. Because that person could have asked you for a favor and you could have said, I don't have any time on my plate right now. I just can't right now. Thanks for asking, but no. And maybe not communicating it like that, but we are actively playing a role when we step into relationship with other people. And we have to be willing to say no to people and take responsibility of our actions, our thoughts, and our feelings in that moment to practice emotional responsibility. So if somebody asks you for a favor to pick them up from the airport and you really don't think it's emotionally right for you and you just feel horrible about doing it, you are allowed to say no. And in saying no, you're taking responsibility for your actions, but you're also going to take responsibility for any guilt or shame that comes up around saying no. Because why do we feel like we have to do so much for others when we maybe don't have that same return for ourselves? Maybe you know this person would never pick you up from the airport if you visited them, and yet you feel some sort of guilt around doing it for them. So we have to look at this mirror in life, and we have to take ownership and responsibility for our emotions. So coming back to this scenario, you might feel a little bit of guilt around saying no because you're thinking that your friend might be upset with you because you won't pick them up from the airport. And in that thinking, we have to recognize that them being upset, them being sad, them being angry, whatever it is they might feel around you saying no, is not your responsibility. Not every emotion that other people have are your responsibilities to deal with. And we can't keep trying to save people from their experiences and their emotions in life. I was talking to somebody this weekend and they were talking about how a close relationship in their life that they're kind of trying to move away from just dumped all this emotional turmoil on them and told them a lot about their mental health and how they were struggling. And they felt an immense amount of guilt to be there for that person because they were like, oh, if I'm not there, I don't want to leave that person alone with it. And I had to have the hard conversation with them to be like, their mental health, that other person's mental health, is not your responsibility. Let's come back and focus on you. Let's focus on your mental health. Let's focus on what you can do for yourself at this time, because that is what is most important. We can't always show up and be there for other people if we're not also doing that for ourselves. And that guilt that eats away at us is part of our mental health. If we are always feeling guilty for not doing for others, we have to start looking in the mirror and ask what we're doing for ourselves. So emotional responsibility is a really big task to take on, and not everyone, actually I'd say most people, are not going to do it in their lifetime. Most people are going to be comfortable with suppressing their emotions, they're going to blame other people, they're going to project onto others, and we all do it, but at a certain point we have to recognize that, hey, I can do this, and I can also start taking steps towards being emotionally responsible for my thoughts, feelings, and actions. So next time somebody asks you to do something, and you really don't want to do it, maybe it's time to start practicing saying no, or if you still decide to do it, stop blaming the other person or asking or being frustrated at them, and recognize where you could take emotional responsibility and look at that frustration for what it is. It's my frustration. What am I doing about it? And how can I handle it moving forward? How can I release the resentment that I'm holding on to? And I know that this may be sounding simple in this short video, but it is a really hard practice to take on. And sometimes you will be frustrated and need to rant and blame and just, validate yourself in any way that you need to. But after we come out of that really big emotional reaction, that's when we could start to take ownership over how we're feeling and recognize that, hey, this is my frustration. What am I doing to sit with it? How am I holding space for it? And why am I feeling frustrated? Where do my expectations not meet reality? So leaving you with a question, I want you to think about one time, maybe in the past year or even more recently, that you've done something for somebody else and you have resented them for your actions. Bring up that situation in your mind and ask yourself, why did I do that for them? What in my brain, what belief in my brain told me that I should do that for them? All right, let me save my voice now before I go into a full-on rant. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, subscribe, support the podcast in any way that is possible for you. I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.